The Yalta Conference of February 1945 was a critical meeting of the Allied leaders, Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin, who convened to shape the post-war world order. The agreements made at Yalta laid the foundation for the division of Europe and the onset of the Cold War. But what if this pivotal moment in history had been influenced by the philosophies of the ancient world? Could Stoic resilience, Confucian ethics, Platonic idealism, or Roman pragmatism have altered the dynamics, decisions, and outcomes of this conference? This speculative yet analytical exploration evaluates how ancient wisdom might have transformed the Yalta Conference, and by extension, the trajectory of the 20th century. 1. The historical backdrop. Understanding Yalta. As Nazi Germany neared defeat, the Allied powers met at Yalta in Crimea to discuss the post-war restructuring of Europe and the handling of Germany. Major decisions included the division of Germany into occupation zones, free elections in Eastern Europe, Soviet entry into the war against Japan, the creation of the United Nations. Despite the spirit of cooperation, deep ideological differences between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union resulted in decisions that soon unraveled. The promise of democratic elections in Eastern Europe was not upheld, leading to the rise of Soviet satellite states and the Cold War. The leaders acted from positions of power, urgency, and political realism. Ancient wisdom, however, might have prompted a very different set of discussions and outcomes. 2. Stoicism at Yalta. Restraint over reaction. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, advocated for control over emotions, acceptance of fate, and acting according to virtue rather than passion or expedience. Applying Stoicism to Yalta suggests a very different tone to the negotiations. Churchill, driven by fear of Soviet expansion, and Stalin, obsessed with security through territorial buffers, made decisions influenced by anxiety and suspicion. A Stoic perspective might have prompted leaders to focus not on securing power, but on pursuing a just and stable peace. For instance, instead of rapidly dividing Germany, a Stoic approach may have emphasized long-term reconciliation and restoration, reducing punitive measures that later fueled division. Moreover, a Stoic Roosevelt might have resisted the urge to make short-term concessions for Soviet participation in the Pacific War, instead asserting moral clarity about Eastern Europe's right to self-determination. The idea of living according to reason and universal law, central to Stoicism, could have laid the foundation for a more genuinely cooperative and less cynical peace settlement. 3. Confucianism. Harmonious order and ethical leadership. Confucian philosophy, rooted in ancient China, emphasizes hierarchical but benevolent governance, moral rectitude, and social harmony. Central to this worldview is the concept of ren, benevolence, lai, ritual propriety, and huaiyai, righteousness. Had the leaders at Yalta internalized Confucian principles, the emphasis might have shifted from spheres of influence to mutual respect and moral responsibility. Confucius viewed leadership as a moral duty. Rulers should be paragons of virtue, not mere power brokers. Imagine Stalin influenced by Ren. His demand for Eastern Europe as a security buffer might have softened into a more cooperative approach respecting the autonomy of smaller nations. Roosevelt, already concerned with liberal internationalism, could have found in Confucianism a philosophical ally to his vision of a world founded on shared values, rather than spheres of dominance. The Confucian ideal of family-like relationships among states could have reframed negotiations, encouraging a more inclusive and long-term view of global governance. This might have resulted in stronger foundations for the United Nations and genuine global cooperation. 4th. Platonism and the philosopher-king ideal. Plato's political philosophy, particularly in the Republic, presents the ideal of the philosopher-king, a ruler guided by wisdom, reason, and justice, rather than personal ambition or populist pressures. If the Yalta leaders had adopted Platonic ideals, they might have evaluated policies not by short-term national interest, but by the form of justice, the inherent good of all humanity. The division of Europe, which was justified in terms of realpolitik, could have been re-evaluated through the lens of Platonic justice, prompting a plan based on fair governance and the rights of individuals rather than geopolitical convenience. Furthermore, Plato warned against the degeneration of political systems into tyranny, especially when leaders prioritize power over wisdom. The tolerance of Soviet domination in Eastern Europe, based on promises that were unlikely to be honored, might have been rejected as a compromise with tyranny. A truly Platonic conferi.